YouTube, welcome back in. Hope everybody's having a fantastic evening. I am Icon. Thanks for checking out another episode. I cannot believe one day after the conclusion to the 2020 CDL season, we get news like this, that competitive Call of Duty is leaving the 5v5 scene. It is now going to revert back to 4v4 that it used to be before Black Ops 4. I personally think that it's a really good move. I just think that the game didn't really work properly. It was too chaotic. Everything happens too fast. It's not Counter-Strike where the rounds and the games are a little bit slower. It's really fast. It's really hectic. And when that happens, it breaks spawn systems and the game can't really predict where to put people. So I am happy that it is going back. I am going to go through a few scenarios here for you guys. I want to talk about what might happen to Chicago, what might happen to Dallas, what might happen to Atlanta, what might happen to all of these different teams. So without further ado, let's go ahead. This is obviously the trailer that broke. This was tweeted out from the COD League Twitter account. It said Season 2 Intel if you missed it. If we hit play, it's just a short 10-second video. Shows the Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War logo. There it says 4v4. Gives the website, and then of course the YouTube channel right there. So that's kind of how we all found out about it. It was about 1 p.m. So obviously stemming from this, there's a ton of tweet. Absolutely every single person in the community was tweeting about it. There's only a couple that I want to mention. First one is Scump. He said, so thankfully fours are back. Now just hope we can play on LAN again. This I will touch in tomorrow's video. There's some more news out there, but because I like to be so in depth with the topics that I cover, I don't want to throw 15 different things in here. So we're going to cover this tomorrow, but today we're sticking with the 4v4 and the roster changes that might come from it. The thread that I really want to show you guys, because I think he made some tremendous points, is this of Clayster. So this was his very first tweet. He said, win champs, franchising happens, team breaks up. So obviously he's talking about E United with Pristini and Arcides and Abizi and Simp and him, and how they won champs and then everything kind of went to free agency and then they broke up. Then he said, wins champs again, it goes from 5v5 to 4v4 and the team breaks up. Now, nobody really knows what's going to happen with Dallas, but obviously one person is going to have to go. Then he says, got to be the luckiest unlucko person on the planet. And it's been a rough couple years for him, right? I mean, obviously he's won back-to-back rings, so it's not rough in that regards. But you got to remember, these guys spend like 8 hours a day together. So after doing that for years, it's hard to lose teammates like that. He does go on to say, well, it was a fun 18 hours, but now I got to stress about this all off-season, woohoo. And that's the thing, right? You know something's going to change rather than just going into the next title with the chemistry and the squad that you have built over the last 8-10 months. It's going to be broken up, so we'll see what happens there. Then he goes on this little bit of a thread here, and he says, don't get me wrong, COD is far more tactical and easier to watch in 4v4. I think 4v4 is far better than 5v5. They should have made this change when every player was a free agent and was building rosters like, I don't know, before this year. Why make teams build like this just to revert? And this is a really good point. I agree wholeheartedly that 4v4 is better. It's a little bit slower. It's less chaotic. It's more tactical. The game just responds better. They know where to put different people, where to spawn them in. It just makes more sense, and it puts a bigger emphasis on like power positions on around the map. If you can get a power position, there's a good chance you're going to be able to hold that down as hard points rotates and stuff like that. But I also agree with the second part of this is if you're going to build a roster, then you should have the foresight to know that it's going to be 4v4, so those are the roles that you need to fill. Totally agree. Then he said, then again, this looks and smells like a cost-cutting measure for orgs to be able to maintain their investment during COVID. Not going to talk about it anymore. Pretty upsetting that we can't see what this team can do next year. Just wish it wasn't like this. Nobody deserves to go. And this is another solid point. If you're thinking about the investment from all these different orgs, they spend so much money to buy into the league. And on top of that, they're paying, the league minimum is $50,000. I don't know exactly what like Clay and Scump and Crim and Envoy and Arcees and what some of these higher tier pros are making, but it's definitely not cheap. So if you can save anywhere from $50 to $150 potentially $1,000, I can see where that would make a little bit of sense. And then the next thing, and I don't know how many people caught on to this, but he says, appreciate how the lads handled this news the last month. that makes it seem like it's something that they've known for a while. So they knew it was going to go to 4v4, but as he says, we were all consummate professionals and just focused on the goals at hand, regardless of what happens. Thanks for that. You guys are beasts. So it looks like they were able to just put it aside, focus on what they had to do, and move forward. So I don't know. These are just all really good points from Klay. If you're not following him, make sure you go follow him on Twitter. I'm sure if you're watching my videos, you're probably following him on Twitter, but I always like the insight that he brings. But with that, I wanted to play around a little bit here for you guys. So as we go ahead and look at what potential rosters could look like, I want to start here with Chicago, because if we're looking at this, obviously I feel like there's an odd man out, but who knows if that's how it's going to actually end up working out. The way I look at this is you can't get rid of these two, right? It just seems like T2P is finally back together. They have the biggest draw in the entire scene. So getting rid of one of them would probably hurt Chicago's stance overall quite a bit. With that said, I feel like Envoy is untouchable. He is the next, at least in my mind, he's the next Scump. Will he ever get the accolades and the accomplishments that Scump has? I don't know, but he's that young SMG with a lot of pure talent, really likable personality. He just brings all of that the young Scump used to bring. And then if we're talking about a fourth between Pristini and Arcides, Arceus is probably their best player, right? So if you're just going off of what comes to you right away, this would be the 4, and Pristini is the one that ends up getting left out, at least in my mind. Now, the other thing that you can do, depending on if it is 4v4, so we know that Envoy's probably going to stay. He would probably be my first pick, and Arcides. But if that's the case, it is going back to 4v4. And if we're thinking about a certain meta, does this complicate things, right? Because Arcides all year was, I mean, it's tough to say this, but I think that he's irreplaceable. I just feel like he brings so much to the table. He's so good with an AR. I'm not sure how you end up getting rid of Arcides in this. So if you don't need 2 main ARs and you don't want to break up the twins, is it worth keeping Pristini around if it means that you get to keep Arcides? Then that would probably bring down Scump. So that's another option. And the third option is just kind of building off of what we said to begin with. You have Scump, you have Formal. Do the twins end up saying, you know what, I don't want to leave my brother again, so those two are going to end up leaving. Say they go over to Seattle and they team up with Octane and whoever else. Who knows what happens? But if something like that were to happen, that would be a squad to watch out for, although they would still have 2 main ARs with Octane and Arcides. But nobody really knows what's going to happen. I can't wait to cover all this stuff, but those are just my potential moves when it comes to the Chicago Huntsmen. Next thing I want to talk about, what happens with our world champs? What happens with the Dallas Empire? First thing that I'll say is I feel like Klay is absolutely irreplaceable. I don't think you can get rid of him. He brings so much, not only in the way of talent, but he has leadership. He has the experience. He's one of the best in-game leaders that this scene or esports as a whole has ever seen. I feel like you can't get rid of him. After that, I feel like you also can't get rid of Shotzi. He's the league MVP, right? You could say that he's the best SMG that our league has. So I don't know how you would get rid of him either. After that, this is where things get a little bit iffy. We've seen the clutch factor, and in that map 1 of the grand finals against Atlanta Faze, Hugh didn't have the best year statistically for the entire year. But you heard it. Klay said it himself. Big-time players make big-time plays in big-time games, and that's what I get from Hugh. So I feel like if you're looking at the core here, Clayster, Shotzi, and Hugh, I don't know how you get rid of either of those 3, which only leaves room for one more. And this is where it gets tough, because if you're going just based on skill, and if it's going to 4v4, Clayster is already your main AR, so I'm not sure if there's room there for Krim, even though he's, and I know that I'm going to hear it because Krim's been saying this his entire career, but I just don't think that you could take Krim and keep him on the team and let Clayster go. That trade just doesn't really make sense to me. So I don't know. If I'm thinking about it, I probably go Illy here, but Illy is still kind of unproven. I think coming into this year, a lot of people thought Illy had the potential to be one of the best pros in the entire league. He's been somebody that everybody's been looking at for years now. And he was good. He was an above average pro, but he definitely didn't put up the accolades of Krim. So I just feel like this is a really tough decision to make. Do you keep Krim, who is that second AR? Will it be what you need in the 2v or in the 4v4 meta? Will it be 2 SMG, 2 AR, or will you keep Illy? Illy's obviously their player that pulls out a sniper rifle and search and destroy, and he provides more of that electricity that Krim probably doesn't, but he's not the in-game leader that Krim is. So this is tough for me. If I had to pick, I don't know. I wish that they could keep all 5. I see this with the potential for Chicago also. In 4v4, you could easily put Pristini in smaller maps, take out maybe Formal, so have 1 AR and 3 really fast SMGs. You have the potential to also do this, right? If it's a smaller map, or potentially search and destroy, plug in Illy. If you're playing hardpoint and you need 2 ARs on a bigger map, then you keep Crim6 and you throw him in. So I don't know if subs will be utilized more, but for me, I think that Illy might be the smarter choice, but I don't see how you get rid of Krim in this scenario. Last but not least, I do want to take a look at our runner-up, the roster for the Atlanta Faze. And again, any comments, put them down below. Let me know what you guys would do. Maybe a trade comes through. Who would you get rid of? Who would you keep? All that stuff, put it down below. But this one, I feel like, is very similar to what we just talked about with Dallas in that you're not getting rid of Simp, right? He's probably the one player in the league that I don't care what happens. I'm building my franchise around him. I am not letting go of him. But with that said, you could also say the same thing for aBeZy, especially what he brings in terms of being that route man, being that entry man in search and destroy. How many 1v1s did we see aBeZy win? How many first bloods did we see aBeZy get in search? So those two are kind of untouchable. And even though he didn't have the best finals, Cellium was the other MVP candidate. And, I mean, he's an absolute beast. Whether he's running an SMG or he's flexing, running an AR, Cellium does it all. He's a super smart player. His gun skill is just off the charts. So this is very similar to what we said with Dallas in that these 3, I don't really know how you would get rid of one of those 3, right? Those 3 are solid. But from there, do you keep Major Maniac or do you keep Priesta? And this is a thing where, well, if you're just strictly talking about a main AR, let's go ahead, let's keep Major Maniac, and those are our 4 moving forward. But as we saw later on in the year, Cellium is a heck of a player with an AR in his hand, and Priesta does really well with an AR too. He's not that main, solid, typical anchor AR that you see in the Major Maniacs of the world, the Formals of the world, the Octanes of the world like that, but he can play really fast like an SMG player with an AR and be super productive. So that's kind of what we saw towards the end of the year there with him. So when you're looking at these rosters overall, I feel like there are some untouchables in rosters, except for maybe with Chicago, honestly, because you want to keep Envoy. And I would say the other one that's irreplaceable is Arcides. But when you have T2P there, that creates the scenario of, well, do you keep T2P and do you get rid of Pristini, knowing that if you get rid of Pristini again, you might lose Arcides? That's a tough scenario. So I love all this roster mania stuff. Down in the comments below, let me know what you think. What would you do if you're Chicago? What would you do if you were Dallas? What would you do if you were Atlanta? It's quite the pickle for these teams to be in, so put the comments down below. I'm interested to see what you guys have to say and what the pulse of the community is. But with that, if you're new around here, I am here for your one-stop shop, all roster mania news, all off-season news. We're going to be breaking it down, being as analytical as we can, so make sure you hit that subscribe button, leave a like. Thank you guys so much. We will see you in tomorrow's upload.